And I think they said it was
What
named
is critter
after
maintenance? I need to interrupt. What does
It
that
doesn't
entail?
sound as bad as it is, you guys.
Changing the oil or what?
That's actually close. We had an anemone, and anemones you typically preserve in formalin because they're soft-bodied, and you need to look at their internal structure. And so those are one of the few animals we collect that goes in the formaldehyde, which is a fixative for soft tissues. Alcohol is not a fixative. Alcohol is a dehydrant. And so anyway, before it goes in alcohol, we fix these soft bodies, animals like anemones, for several days, and then we wash them out in tap water overnight. And then tomorrow we'll start bringing them up into alcohol until we get them up to 70%. So I was starting that process.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Carry on. That was very interesting.
Yeah.
More than you ever wanted to know about critter maintenance. Can we get a little tighter zoom? Is that possible?
Yeah, go ahead.
Can I call a friend, or can we eliminate half? Or trying to remember, what was that? Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I guess that was the show.
You're stumped, huh?
Yeah. Okay, Asako also thought it could be Norella, so we got 3 people who think it's Norella, so that's good, that previous one. And here, this is definitely a coralliid, a precious coral. But it's probably in the genus Hemicorallium. I'm going to leave it like that. That's good enough for government stuff.
Yes, even though this is non-government entity.
That's right, but that was a standard expression when we were...
So the audience is still curious about the Don Quixote
So one of our audience members says that this is reminding us of what the last shift said, that it was named after a ship that sailed in this area in the late 1800s.
Excellent. Wow. Thank you very much. Well, who's the guy who came up with that information? You guys got to occasionally throw your names out, first names, that is.
And I know Veronica from Kauai is following us again today.
Is she? That's terrific.
Yes, so thank you, Veronica.
So thank you very much for that information. We really appreciate it.
Nice overhang here. Let's look along it.
There, another listener is wondering if we can touch the corals.
If we're not going to collect it, we do not like to touch it, frankly. Every once in a while, a thruster blast of water can sort of disturb the coral a little bit, but we try not to touch them if we can help it. They're just too beautiful. They're too fragile, and we're in a monument.
Zoom in, please. Maybe halfway. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever looks good.
So the 2 yellow elongate ones are Chrysogorgia in that genus, and the red one was probably another coralliid, a precious coral. And as we're moving over to the left, we have what's called a primnoid that looks like it has a little brittle star or something on it.
What's this floofy one?
Excuse me?
What's the fluffy one?
That's going to be another Chrysogorgia, the one sort of up in the top left corner.
Okay.
But it's a big, different type of Chrysogorgid. It's probably it's going to be in a different genus, maybe, than the other ones we just saw. Steve Oskovitz was just reminding me that when we encounter a suitable high density area, and I'm not quite sure this meets the criteria yet, we should try to get a water sample for eDNA for Dr. Meredith Everett.
All right, thanks. You can come wide.
We'll keep our eyes out to see if we can.
So we just came up that little kind of steeper wall there, and now we're rounding out, rolling over on the top here. So it might follow this contour. It seems to have some action on it. So does that sound good?
Yeah, let's take a look.
Okay.
Because I agree, we're getting a little bit of action here.
Mm-hmm. Call it Chrysogorgidae Ridge.
This is another one of those ones you were just looking at, right? I think.
Let's see here.
Nice. All right. Should move along
Yeah, I
now.
think that one is the, I'm going to say this wrong because I haven't committed the new name to memory, but Remulagorgia militaris.
Oh, it's another one, it's militaris. So you described yesterday the militaris comes from the polyps are lined up along one of the branches to almost look like it's in a military procession.
170.
Yeah, I think somebody told me that at some point. I don't
Sounds
remember who
good.
told me.
20, okay.
Oh, it makes sense, and if that's true, that's very
Bridge nav.
clever of
Yeah.
whoever
20
named
meter
that.
step,
that coral.
170.
It sticks in your head. It's very sticky kind of
Yeah.
observational thing. And Steve Auskovich, who's also on the vessel with us, our coral expert, he seems to, his observation, it's kind of odd that we haven't seen any black corals yet today. Those are some of the bathypathes we've seen on the other previous dives, but doesn't sound like we've seen any of those on this dive or on this, on this dive yet today.
Well, in my experience, when you say something like that,
Yeah, they're gonna show
you're
up.
basically challenging Mother Nature to come up with
All
one.
right, well, here we go. We got some corals coming up. Let's see if...
It wouldn't surprise me if in another
holds
few
true.
minutes, we come up with some black corals, because that's always happens to me. I'll say, there aren't any of these here, and then
There's
they all...
like a little eel or something on the left.
Where are you looking?
On the left.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh,
A fish.
yes.
Of some flavor.
Oh, yeah, let's take a look
Eel-like
at
fish.
the eel.
Yeah, you bet.
This is going to be a cutthroat eel, but this could be a different one. Ken, I hope you're watching. We got one of your critters.
Oh, he's commenting. Is that Kenneth Sulak?
Yep. It is. He's saying it's Diplopoma cantha. That actually was my second choice from Bizogaigus because I was looking at the nostril.
Ready to
Oh, no,
zoom?
no. Diplopoma
yeah, go
cantha's not got the big nostril. Sorry. Something else, but
I'm going to keep getting closer to it as well.
okay. Here we go with an eel. We need really good close-ups on these eels to get the diagnostic characters, if that's possible. Very slender one.
You come down in Delta, please.
I think it's got white lateral line pores, Ken.
Oh, where are you going?
Oh.
Where are you going, buddy? Come on back.
Can we get some pictures of that, please?
Does it have it or not? Maybe not. I thought I saw it, but, well, it sort of does.
I think he's going to give another opportunity. He's going to turn second here. Maybe not.
I'm not sure. Oh, hi.
Did they get stung by the corals? Is that
No, it's just the light.
Oh,
oh, yep.
Well,
reverse. Look at that backwards swim. That was cool.
Oh.
All right, I'm at the end of my leash.
Okay, Ken, I couldn't really see the lateral line pores very well. I couldn't
can
tell if
try
they were
again.
white or black, but maybe you did.
Coming back towards
Very
me.
slender eel. I'm going to throw out a guess, and you can blast it again as Iliophus in the genus Iliophus. But let's see what he's got to say about it. Because I think it's got white lateral line pores, a little dots on its side running down the length. Don't those look white?
Yeah,
Uh,
I do.
Oh,
faintly.
okay, that's great.
Come on,
Thank
please.
you.
Yep.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what Ken thinks.
Ooh, a little thruster wash there.
There's another one of those long stalks from the sponge we saw the other day. Just to the right, the view.
Oh, that's a good long one again.
Mm-hmm. What was that one again? What was the...
Oh, that was Caulophacus in that group again, but it was a humongous one.
Yeah.
This is pretty good size. It's dead, of course, but not really crusted, so
Weird.
it's not that old.
Raj.
Okay, yay, I got one right. Ken confirms it's Iliophus.
And what's that red thing in the lower bottom of the screen, lower left-hand side?
It's going to be one of those anthomastus mushroom corals, I think.
Think so?
Yeah, I saw it. Just
Oh, okay.
Moya from New Zealand wants to know, are there any corals with the common name Gollum? Gollum.
I don't think so, not here. That's a pretty interesting question. I don't think so. My visual on Gollum is not that attractive, and usually these corals are pretty attractive. So, well, maybe we can get, maybe there is one that's kind of not so nice that somebody named. Somebody gave that name, but no, I'm sorry, Mary. I don't know, but I've never heard of that.
And Antonella, what are you piloting today, Argus or Hercules?
Antonella just stepped into the Herc seat and she's getting set up, so she will maybe take questions in a minute.
Oh, okay.
Hello, testing. Turn the volume way up. There you go. How about that? These headphones are really loud, so I turn the volume way down.
It's the fancy pants headphones.
It's mainly the fanciness of the pants.
So can you hear me, Antonella?
Yes.
Okay, just say hi to your fans. They're missing you in New Zealand.
Hi.
Moya says that might need to ask why they're called precious corals to get the Gollum reference.
Let's see why they're called precious corals to get the Gollum reference. Well,
yeah,
there's a subset of deep water corals are called precious corals. Not all of them are called precious corals. And the ones that are referred to as precious, it's because they actually have potential commercial value. And mostly that term is referring to shallower water corals in the 100, 200, 300 meter range that used to be collected and their skeletons dried and then actually were used to make jewelry out of it. Nobody harvests these corals because it's so deep, of course, and it's very difficult. Thank goodness.
But also because this is a monument.
Well, yeah, it's a monument, but even elsewhere in the monument, if you think about it, this operation, it would not be commercially sustainable, just the amount of money to try to harvest corals. So I'm hoping they're safe for a while until, who knows, if technology comes up. But around 300 or 400 meters, there has been harvesting. Black corals, technical divers will go down and harvest black corals. And then the precious red corals have been harvested by submersibles or ROVs or by tangled nets is what they call them, which are very destructive. So that's why they're called precious, because there's a monetary value to them, unfortunately.
Scott France also adds
It's
that precious corals comes from Corallium rubrum,
if you want,
which is the original pink coral jewelry species found in the Mediterranean.
Okay, so Scott, I don't understand the connection to Gollum. Can you clarify that?
I think it's Lord of the Rings, yo. So like the precious coral, it's
my
precious.
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 Oh, jeez, I got it. I got it. I
Guys are
thought he was
killing me back
referring to
there.
the Mediterranean. I just was not picking that up.
No, I didn't
Okay.
get it either.
Okay.
Oh, precious, my precious.
We needed a bigger
Sorry.
hint on that one.
Uh-huh.
We're a little slow sometimes here.
It's the food. There's a sponge.
And this one has the yellow stalk, I think.
Let's see, does it?
Yeah.
You are very quiet.
I don't know if it's
Oh, no.
yellow. I don't know if it's yellow.
I guess I was
Yeah.
hoping it was
no,
yellow.
not really, actually.
Okay, this is, again,
Don't worry about it now.
another glass sponge in the genus Calophacus again. Very common down here. You hear us call it out a lot. A very common stock sponge at these depths. Some sponges are very, very hard, but if you were to grab the body of the sponge on the top of this one, then it would be very spongy or soft.
It's pretty amazing they've had so many different species and forms of sponge. I mean, they're certainly one of the
I'll go off
oldest
mute when you're
animals
ready.
on the planet in terms of being around for a long time and diversifying. But they're all kind of doing the same thing. So it's amazing they've taken so many different forms. They're all filtering the water column, passing it through their body and collecting what they can from the water that zooms around them and goes through them. But what would be the reason for having so many different forms for similar purpose?
Well, there's different ways to skin a cat, as the old expression has said. Obviously, they're successful. Not one size fits all. Ones that have stalks, they can get enough food and be able to reproduce and thrive. And ones that don't have stalks can do the same thing. It's kind of like the corals have all different types of shapes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there are certain types of shapes are more suitable for certain types of conditions.
Mm.
Like the ET sponge, the sponge with the ET shape. Like, why would it have those two holes?
Yeah. Well, the water is going to go in through there or out through there. I still get confused which direction it is. But basically what happens in a sponge is there sort of channels or pores that the water go through. And then as it exits the sponge, these channels start merging to form larger and larger holes that allow the water to get out more freely. So a lot of times the water enters sort of the body of the sponge when you think you would enter those big holes, but it's actually not. It's entering the body of the sponge and exiting through the bigger holes.
And then some sponges have those white
There's
stalks.
something white moving coming towards us.
Yeah, I see it over there in Argus to the right.
It's to the right, yeah.
It's a big
You're talking
fish.
about the big stalked thing?
No, it's a big fish, I think.
No, there's a big fish coming to our right.
In fact, it's a really very
Big
good
fish
size
to the right.
fish.
So turn a little more
It's right underneath the tether in the Argus view.
Oh, that's not the one I was looking at.
Oh, sorry.
I think that might not be a fish. It's not. Is it? Maybe it is.
I don't know.
You guys very excited though.
You're talking this thing?
Large fish.
No,
coming
I was
towards.
looking at a smaller one that was coming towards us.
Okay.
Is it still there? I don't quite see. I think you're right. I thought that thing was moving initially, but you're right. I think it's a sponge.
I'm neutral.
There is something moving in the lower left hand, unless that's part of the lens. There's
Okay,
a
so that's on your
distortion
right,
in the
Antonella.
lens. Or is something on the lens itself.
Yeah, there's something moving. Or not.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
whatever
something
that
on the
wall
I
is,
lens.
you
think
can
it's
see
a
it in
red
Argus view.
dot.
That's something on the lens.
Yeah, that corresponds with the line in your sonar over there.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
not
And
sure
there's the
this.
line in Herc view now.
Not sure the top of this
Yeah.
ledge is all
Is that
that
a wall?
interesting.
Whoa.
Nice wall.
You can.
Yeah, this looks like a rock outfall.
Sure.
These might all be nodules here at the bottom of this rock.
It's amazing how uniform they look when they're sitting on the bottom like that, just with kind of almost equidistant spacing between them.
I don't quite understand the process by which they form. I mean, they slowly build up around some type of nucleus, a piece of shell or another small rock or something.
Yeah, I don't know what the aggregation processes they're filtering out through the water column.
I don't know, pilot. This is looking a little dead up here. I don't know if you want to spend a little more time here or try to scoot down by the ledge again.
Yeah, we're just looking at this one new feature of this little wall here.
Okay.
And then if that's not any good, we'll come back to the left where it's the top of a bigger wall.
Okay.
That sound all right?
Yeah, that's fine. Is that a rock or a coral right to the right of the ROV on the Argus view? Right by the tether right now. It's probably on the other side of the ledge, so.
Sorry, Chris, I wasn't on SPL. Are you looking at that white line at the bottom right?
No, it was a little further up. I don't quite see it now because it's sort of out of the light field a bit.
Okay.
Argus. But I think it was probably on the other side of the ridge, so that's no problem if we miss it. But you know, we're not the only ones who got that golem thing. Asako said she didn't get the connection either, which is, that's comforting. I think Scott was the first one who got it.
Well, I guess it just shows how connected with our environment we are.
I thought it was a pretty clever remark by the viewer there. It's just we're a little slow here.
Well, a viewer wants to know how if it is difficult to explore Papahānaumokuākea at night more than during the day, or is it about the same?
It's about the same.
Well, at this depth, it's about the same because there's no ambient light that reaches down this far. It's if the lights were turned off on the ROVs, it would be pitch black, absolutely no light reaching this depth.
Yeah, and because we're in such deep water, the ship just has water all around it. There's no threat of running aground or anything like that in here, so it makes no difference in that respect. Whether it's night or day.
So I guess the difficulties might come with the terrain, right?
Yeah, that's it. And you always have to have a little bit of concern with tethered vehicles, and so that's what's so unique about the system.
It's more like a fin almost. I'm not loving it though. I don't know if we want to move back down slope to something more consistent. We're doing due south, yeah.
So we sticking with this contour, or what are we
150
doing?
All right, and then that should hopefully give you enough room to move back
They're
down.
talking about it now.
So
Okay.
downslope is directly to the east. All right, so I'm going to do 150.
And there's a few corals on this wall, you can see. Now that we're down a little bit.
Can I get a 20 meter set bearing 150?
Yeah, definitely that beneath the lip of a ledge like that behind it is definitely one of the more popular locations for corals and sponges. I like to think of it like a river flowing past, the currents going over the top, and then part of it descends and kind of eddies behind the wall, and that gives the corals a couple opportunities for filtering food out of the column, the water column, instead of just one. If they're up on top, the current just goes straight past them. That maybe seems pretty common that that behind the ledge is one of the more abundant sites that we've seen so far.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Current plays a big role down here. We just don't completely understand it yet.
Yeah, it's all about the current.
Unfortunately, we can't see the current, except we can see particles in the water going by, but can't see the big picture of how it's really swirling around these rocks and blowing off. And
yeah, then as we move down, like to get down slope, you're going to go to your port side.
Because it doesn't necessarily transfer down through the water column. So if it's right now it's a little choppy outside and a little rain, and actually the rain might have stopped, but it was a little choppy and windy. But that doesn't transfer down 7,000 feet down to where we are now, or it might take a long time to go through all the different. Does it actually transfer down ever? Or, I mean, how does that mechanism work?
not so much. We're pretty
Isolated.
Yeah. You're seeing some motion in the Argus view, and that's by design. Argus is connected to the ship. So as the ship moves around in the waves, Argus will move around the waves because there's a direct heavy cable that's connected to it. But this system is designed to isolate the main vehicle, which is the ROV itself, from that surface swell by connecting it via tether to Argus, and then keeping a little bit of slack in that tether so that it won't pull up and down.
Yeah. Definitely makes it a lot more stable for the camera and imagery.
Yeah. Little Chrysogorgia here. Like we may be getting down a little closer to the bottom. It's kind of hard to see the corals from this high up.
A lot of boulders in this field here.
So a viewer wants to know how the ROVs are powered.
They're powered off the ship's electricity. The ship runs generators to power everything we do on here. And we also send some of that electricity down to power the ROVs. So if you want to get all technical, we send high voltage 2400 three-phase. That's stepped up from 470 volts at 40 amps a phase. And that runs both the hydraulic pump, which powers all of Hercules, as well as all of the electrical stuff, the computers, the lights, the sensors on Hercules and Argus. That's all sent down through the main 6.8 umbilical. That's the one on the winch, the 7,000 meter one, and then it keeps going down through the tether to Hercules too.
Thank you, Trevor.
That's a lot of electricity going down. So those lights on there, they're LED lights, right? They're several thousand, 100,000 lumens,
That's right,
few 100,000 lumens.
Yeah, lots of lights.
They both have
like
lights.
Like you were saying earlier, how dark it is down there.
And the water absorbs quite a bit of light, as you can see, you know, even with all that light. I mean, that's the same kind of light you might see in a football stadium.
Yeah, for some context, we have, I don't know, approximately 100,000 lumens on Hercules. And to compare that, a single car headlight is about 1,500.
Wow.
Now it's hard to do a direct comparison there.
But that's a really cool
good
comparison.
Yeah, it is. So it must heat up the water a little bit around those lights, huh?
It does a little bit, but they're shockingly efficient. Like you can, on deck, not a good idea to run them for too long, but they're not going to burn your hand to touch them.
Really? Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the other lights, the halogen ones, you can't even run them at the surface; they'll explode, right?
Yeah, unless you have like 30 seconds, maybe.
So the upshot of that is that it takes a tremendous amount of light to light up the darkness down here, and in pitch black. These organisms have never ever seen light from the sun. Maybe for this environment, for if these seamounts indeed are 120 million years old from the Cretaceous era, and many of these have never broken the surface. So this habitat we're looking at now may have never seen sunlight ever.
This particular seamount has broken the surface,
Okay.
but not where we're diving right now. This part has never been above the surface. But the top of the seamount, which we are avoiding, has been at the surface. And why are we avoiding it?
I would
Because
recommend getting closer before the zoom.
we don't want to get
It's really
into
hard
where shallow water corals grew many millions of years ago and created carbonate up on the top, because carbonate isn't very good for dating. You know, and you know, it's not going to have, well, it might have manganese crust on top, but this particular ridge, you know, when we came over the sort of flat part of the ridge, that's not the top of the seamount. It just happens to be sort of a flatter part of this ridge that we're working our way up to. And that's by design. As I said, we purposely set up the dive to be below that carbonate cap.
Right. So. Yeah, and that carbonate cap can be quite thick. In Midway Atoll, which isn't part of this chain, which is part of the Hawaiian archipelago chain, back in the 1950s, they did some core drilling at Midway to find out how thick is that coral cap that sits on top of the seamount. So Midway is about 27 million years old. So about 27 million years ago, it used to be where the Big Island or Hawaii Island is today. So over 27 million years, it's drifted to the northwest and coral has grown up on top of it. And when they drilled through that coral cap, they found that it was about 1,000 feet deep, 1,000 feet of coral skeletons that has kept that atoll at or near the surface for those millions of years that it's been around. And if you go a little bit further, the last emergent feature in the Hawaiian archipelago, still within Papahanaumokuakea Marine National Monument, is Kure Atoll. And that's about 28 million years old. And just past Kure is a place called the Darwin Point, where the waters get cooler because you're moving to the northwest. And the corals can't grow fast enough to keep that island near the surface as the old volcano beneath it just subsides and collapses back into the ocean. And so the seamounts past Kure Atoll are all submerged. They're all beneath the surface, all the way up through the Emperor seamounts and to where the Pacific Plate subducts beneath in the Kamchatka region of Russia, beneath the, is it a Eurasian plate that it subducts underneath? I can never remember which one.
Yeah, I get them confused myself, which is which.
Yeah. But these seamounts are moving in a different direction, and that's why we're exploring them. They're kind of almost not quite perpendicular to the Hawaiian archipelago or the Hawaiian ridge, but definitely intersect the Hawaiian ridge. Some of the Hawaiian ridge volcanoes actually came up through these older Cretaceous 100 million year old seamounts. So we find some of these seamounts that actually have dual ages, right?
Yep.
So they may have 27 million year old rocks on top of 100 million year old rocks.
That's right. It's kind of unique feature. You know, when you, I guess the equivalent is the lightning hitting twice in the same spot, right? So in this case, lava is erupting twice in the same spot, just at different times.
Yeah,
there's some corals way up ahead, but you know, we're probably going to stay up for a bit because we're about in a dinner change here. So there may be sort of a swap out of some of the crew here.
The scientists have to practice their filter feeding in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And how do we know that seamounts have broken the surface?
So one of the interpretations of seamounts that have very flat tops to them, which we refer to as geos, is that they have been at the surface because a typical volcano will sort of erupt as sort of a mound or a cone, you know, and then erosion will take place. And if it erupts and it breaks the surface and then it stops erupting, then you start getting erosion and you'll start getting coral growing around the part that's shallow, in shallow water, the shallow water corals. And those two phenomenon combined ultimately will result in the flattening of and shearing off of the top cone of the seamount and the flattening of it. And then the seamount will gradually sink into the seafloor just because it has a lot of mass and it's sinking into the mantle. And eventually it'll get to a point where it gets so deep that those corals can't keep up. They can't keep growing and keeping sort of the top near the surface, and it just keeps sinking down. And we think that's what happened with this particular seamount.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so there has to be a reason. I mean, most flat tops, volcanoes just don't do that in general, the big volcanoes, so that's the interpretation. You know, of course, there's always an exception. There's sometimes you get lava erupting as sort of a sheet flow or a ponding over it, but...
Okay. A viewer wants to know if we have
Oh, is this a black coral? Oh, is it?
Where's that?
About in the middle of the screen there, the one that has the S shape?
It might be a bamboo coral. I'm not sure.
They're just swapping out, and then we'll get back on it.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
We're drifting off into the abyss. This is where we see the giant six-gill shark, right? That comes up. What's the biggest critter you've seen while down in a sub, Chris?
What's that?
Just turn back around. They were some corals that spun out of view.
Trying to think about that. Well, the biggest thing in the sub or ROV or both? Or
yeah, either
well,
or.
The ROV was that gigantic sponge that Daniel Wagner and I...
You want to see the sponge or the coral? Sponge below us, corals above us.
Can we take a look a little bit and just see what we've got up above?
Sure.
Yes, they discovered a sponge the size of a minivan. So we're shooting on this expedition for a sponge the size of a garbage truck, right?
Whoa, that'd be cool. See, I'm going to look at this one on the left here.
Or should
yeah,
that looks
pretty,
the one on the right.
That looks pretty good. The one on the left will work.
Should we deviate from vehicles as measurements?
We now know that we should be calling this particular type of coral a golem coral.
That's right, it is the golem coral.
Oh, come down fast.
A little bit of a joke that one of the viewers suggested, because we typically refer to these as precious corals.
I'll just come
and it's a reference to the Hobbit.
And then what was that soft coral again? What was that one?
Yeah, Anthomastus.
Anthomastus.
Now it's Heteropolypus.
Heteropolypus, I like that. I can remember that easier, I think.
Hetero push in a bit there if you want video.
What's
hetero meaning diverse polyps, or?
Yes.
Or just multiple polyps.
Yeah, go for a polyp zip.
Ooh, nice.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Love a good polyp
picture time.
Oh, there are anemones on it?
Yep, that's correct.
Yes, that's a beautiful anemone. I'm still going to stick with my Venus flytrap anemone.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with the genus on the coral, Hemicorallium.
What is that on the top left there?
Front left.
Almost looks like a cup coral on a coral.
Oh, that sort of orange thing, pink thing up in the upper left corner?
Yeah.
It's an anemone. It's kind of closed up a bit. These are...
We haven't seen any cup corals out here.
No, we haven't. That's a good point. We should have seen a few of them by now, but there was a geologist on the last watch that had kind of an interesting observation. It's got me thinking about this a lot. And he was noticing that the manganese crust is not particularly thick for seamounts that should be extremely old. And he threw out the suggestion that where we are, there was a big flank failure or landslide. And so this rock was not exposed hundreds of millions of years ago. It was only exposed about maybe 20 million years. And it hasn't had time to accumulate that thick crust, this new rock that's
that's interesting.
It's very interesting. His name is Kevin Conrad, and he works with Andrea Balbus there.
But that wouldn't affect the dating of the rocks, would it?
No, it wouldn't, because the rock itself is still going to go all the way back to lava, but it affects the thickness of the crust. that's accumulating on it. But it was curious to me because I'm used to seeing extremely thick crusts on seamounts that we think are quite old, and this is quite thin in general. And he came up with an explanation, which is quite plausible. So it's
that makes sense.
so that the white coral over on the upper right is that Plurigorgia or that Romula gorgia militaris. Again, this has been a common denizen of all of our dives.
You can see the polyps marching along in straight order.
And there's another branch of a different color, coral, a primnoid, that's just above it right in the upper right corner. So we're looking at 3 coral species.
So unless they're disturbed, given that there's always darkness, are the polyps generally always extended, or is there some criteria for, I know if they were to be touched or even the prop wash, sometimes they can cause them to retract, but otherwise, are they always open?
Dan, do you see those sponges up ahead?
It's a...
Yeah, is that a hint?
Yeah, that's a hint. Let's go look at some sponges.
That's right. Hui huakai.
I'm getting a hint that we should...
it's a good question.
I
honestly don't know. You know, in shallow water corals, they will open up at night and close during the day.
Do you want a ship move?
Right.
But there is no real
we're all
light
settled
difference
in.
down
No, I mean, it's all darkness.
Hold off for a minute.
Well, we're going to go look for some sponges, because that's who we are. We are Team Sponge.
There's,
Hui huakai.
Some sponges and corals right here in the neighborhood.
Sure are.
Argus is getting a little close.
Yeah,
there.
I'm seeing that.
Well, I'm not going to let you guys worry about that. I'm going to complete it. All right.
How's our weather?
Okay. There was one moment of not going the direction we're supposed to, but it's been okay.
That's
Down to 11 knots on the wind.
Definitely hold off on that ship.
Could you zoom in on the smaller sponge beneath the stalked ones if you got a chance?
Hold on, Steve. Gabby, can you pull up the DSC there? If you hit left computer, left monitor, and then still cam. I'll try and frame that up as well.
We've even got Steve up here for operation.
We're going to try and multitask here and get Zeus video and digital stills camera in the same picture.
So is that sponge below, is that attached or is that collapsed?
I don't know. I'm going to wait until he's set up to get a little bit better video on it.
You could probably come down just a little bit.
Which one did you want to zoom in on?
Well, you see the one sticking up at the stalk. It's the one that's just below that, kind of that little...
The one in the center of the
in the
picture
center
there?
Yeah, it's a different
Steve,
sponge.
you can push in on the HD camera if you...
So
Wow, what are all those little...
Is that too far for you guys, or are you all right with that?
I'm okay. I'm just trying to figure out what I'm looking at here.
is it a dead sponge?
No, it's not dead.
I'm just looking at, I can't come up much further without pulling on him. And I'm looking at the Argus Mezzo.
Yeah, you can do a move to get it off the cliff a little bit there if you want.
So I think that's going to be, it's going to be perpendicular to our current, like the bearing we've been moving on, our course from before. Yeah.
090, 135, somewhere in that neighborhood.
10. Yeah, seems reasonable.
The ship is being pushed around a little more today than it was the other day, because of this chop. It's making it a little more challenging.
More normal-ish type of weather for this time of year.
I think that's great.
Yeah, we've had pretty stunning weather so far.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Because that'll keep, that's a great move. I love it. That'll get Argus closer to Herc, but also further from the cliff.
I don't know what we're looking at. If you look at the attachment sites over to the right, it's not that frilly filamentous attachment.
Sorry, if you're talking to me up here, I can...
No, I was talking to the other science party here. Thank you. Well, that's great. Thank you very much for that. And
yeah, already that move, just even the littlest bit of it, allows me to come up enough to clear the side. the
Is that one of those
20-meter
Velcro
range.
attachments where it has little filaments that insert into the rock and hold it?
Yeah, it's like it has multiple attachment points, and I think it's glued to the rock rather than grappling it. There are little separate points. You know, like a tree that reroots into the ground.
That's the money shot DSC there.
We're good with that. Thanks, pilot. If we could zoom out a little bit and see what else we got here.
The bottom of that's going to get cut off when it gets cropped.
That's all right.
I don't suppose there's any way you could swing a little bit over to the left so that we could get a little different look at this guy. I think we're looking at it sort of sideways right now, but that may be a little difficult.
Yeah, I can get any angle you want there.
Oh, beautiful.
It's kind of a beautiful cluster, yeah.
You want to see where the sponge attaches to the, or you want to see the base of all the?
I want to see sort of the face that's kind of right up against the coral. That's this is I'm not getting any sense of what it actually looks at very well right now.
Sorry, the base of the coral or the base of the sponge?
No, the base of the sponge, but if you can rotate around toward the left so that you can look at it looking to the right, if that makes any sense.
I see what you mean.
You want to be looking right at it.
He wants to see where the sponge is attached to the rock. If I understand
Sako
correctly.
is saying here the white colony on top could be another Cibagorgia.
Yeah, and then if we could zoom here, this is showing me what I need to see, I think. That would be great if that's possible. So I'm pretty sure this is sponge. We certainly haven't seen this dive, and we might have seen it once before in a previous dive.
Do you want to continue to rotate around?
Yeah, and maybe a little bit closer. I mean, the zoom slightly. Just to
Yeah, you can zoom in a bit there if you want, Steve.
You curious little bugger, you.
What are the things on it? The little balls?
Excuse me?
What are those little, like, balls on the coral?
I don't know.
Okay,
that's good, thank you.
So
I think we're going to let this guy go.
We're going to feed him.
Yeah.
Looks like we are feeding him.
Sorry, I got into the cliff there on the left.
You can clearly see the one above it is a Paragorgia. It's closed up, and when it does, it has these bubblegum sort of balls on the end of the branches, that white.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we can look for something else and see.
Great.
What's that? I can barely hear back there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me see if I can adjust the mic. Yeah, this is great. Thank you very much. And maybe we can look for something else.
Sure. Trevor has the super whammy headphones, so he turns, they work better than the not super whammy ones that I have. So he turns it down, I think.
Okay.
So we could probably do another ship move just because Herc is pretty far ahead of Argus. Argus is looking, almost due south. I haven't sat in this seat very much, so I don't know.
You can put Argus behind Herc, that'd be great.
Dan usually makes those kind of calls. I'm trying to figure it out too. Yeah.
Put Argus behind Herc, 20 meters off the cliff. Tilt up, Gabby.
I'm working on it.
That's probably going to be 225-ish, I would, or 180-ish. Yeah, sorry, 180.
getting a few questions on how old do you think some of those corals were based on their size?
Another good question. Smaller coralliids.
Bring your heading to the right a bit, Gabby. I'm going to come up the hill just a little.
It'd be the size of, say, an iPad or something. They have been dated to 80, 100, 150 years. These corals are quite a bit bigger, these pink ones. At least probably several hundred years, I would say, for sure. Perhaps even older.
So pretty.
You know, it's kind of interesting is we always sort of say that the communities on these seamounts are always kind of different. But if you think back to where we saw a really abundant bunch of corals a couple dives ago, they're kind of the same players. The corallium,
that's the end of your leash there, Dan.
The Pleurogorgia, the little mushroom corals.
Back to there a little.
So that's actually kind of unusual to see the exact complement of corals on two
different locations.
Yeah. It's just one thing I was sort of thinking about here.
Usually each seamount is quite different in the complex of species, or
that's a tug there,
I guess the way you look at it is if you
am I going the right way to relieve it, or do I need to come down?
The number of species or the type of species is sort of a bell curve. They're sort of overlapping bell curves, so that you get some species that are the same on both seamounts, and then you have some unique species as well to each seamount, and then the number of each species can differ quite a bit.
Yeah.
But to me, this looks very similar to the number and the density and types of corals that we saw in that other one.
Perfect. Thanks, Aaron.
This one is a little bit more sparse population than the other one, but
just gonna come down the hill here a bit to get a little closer to Argus. Bilateral left, that'll do it.
Yeah, okay.
So what's the slope you think we're looking at here?
Like in degrees, or which part do you mean?
Yeah, degrees or percent. One of
degrees.
That. Degrees.
I don't know. 50.
45, maybe.
45, 50.
Yeah, 50.
Depends on where you look, but it's
it's fairly steep.
It's falling off here pretty good.
Yeah. We've got a bunch of things growing on these rocks here.
Yeah, this is a bit of a little outcroppy thing here. I'm gonna parallel around here.
So this kind of habitat with all the fairly chunky rocks sticking up is going to create some turbulence, right?
Yeah, and it's some sort of on the fence as to whether that's good or bad.
20 meter step 180.
There's some plenty to look at here.
Oh, sorry, I've been ignoring the chat. Sako Matsumoto asked about that white colony on the top of that cluster. Yes, I do think it's a Paragorgia, Sako, and it may be this thing that's Cybab. I'm not going to say this right. Cybabogorgia or something like that. We collected a coral that looked very similar to that coral a number of years ago, and that was the tentative genus that it was placed in.
Gabby, can you pull the DSC up again?
Yes.
Kind of little nice diversity here.
Yeah, so we got two different types, very different types of glass sponges. The one that we're looking at in the center is what's called a leaf sponge in the genus Tritopleura, and the one on top was another Pheronematid in a different family. More beautiful coralliids. I wonder if we could take a look at that yellow one that's kind of propped right on the top of the rock. That could be different.
Sure.
Yeah, it definitely looks different by color at the very least.
Yeah, this is a really spectacular leaf sponge, this Treatopleura that's sticking out. That's quite large.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty interesting.
I'm just gonna float up slow so Steve can maybe get a digital still shot on the way in here. If the vehicle's moving slower, he might have a better chance of high resolution photo.
Have they ever deployed current modelers down at these depths, the ones that you just might drop and leave for a couple weeks or something like that to map the currents in a given area on a deep seamount?
I don't think anyone's done it out here.
Not out here,
Yeah.
but
I don't know. I mean, it's a good idea. I think it's kind of difficult. They're expensive. The pressure down here means that you're kind of restricted in your instruments. They do have ADCPs or acoustic Doppler profilers that are in pressure housings that could be this deep, but.
Chris, what's the one that the thin, like 3 branches?
Yeah, that's a primnoid, and it's probably Norella macrocalyx is what it's called, the one that we just passed by. And yeah, this does look like it's a primnoid, excuse me, a paragorgid. This is similar to the one that Asako Matsumoto was asking about a moment ago.
Okay, Steve, you can push in there a bit if you want. I might be too far away, so.
Well, it's got more of the anemones. So this is the first time we've really seen that. Seen that on these dives. Is the
push in a bit more if you want.
Anemone associated with the coral?
Yeah,
seems to happen quite a bit down this particular
Aaron,
dive.
after this move, we
yeah,
can
I'm
just
gonna
stop.
look up. I think we got a
Don't
name
put in the
for
next one.
it's kind of a
So
coral
just want to hang out
clinging
for a bit.
anemones.
Yeah, I think we're trailing back a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we're going to be here for a few minutes.
So
Yeah,
Asako,
it looks like
I
there's
think
stuff to
this
see.
is similar to the one we were seeing before. This has got all the polyps out, so it looks a little bit different, whereas the other one closed them up a bit. But I'm pretty sure you would agree that this is a paragorgid, and question is, what genus it belongs to.
Could we maybe collect a Niskin here?
What's that?
Steve wanted a Niskin when the diversity
Oh,
increased. Could we maybe get
sure.
one here
Yeah,
while we
you
sit?
could go ahead and do a Niskin here. That would be okay.
It's a great look at the how the anemones are wrapped around the corals so completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how this type of anemone grips. Some like to attach the rocks upright, and these things can wrap the bottom parts of them around the branches. Okay, I'm closing in on a possible ID for these anemones. Yeah, so
did you want to see
I
that
think
sponge
these coral
too,
hugging anemones are in
corals?
the genus Amphianthus, if that makes a sense. Makes sense to you, Sarah?
Wait, that's the name of the coral? Or the
No, that's the
That's
name of
the
the
anemone.
anemone.
anemone?
Yeah.
Man, we need like a drop-down box over here for these spellings.
Did you
Great.
want the Niskin
I'm
here?
sorry.
Did you want the Niskin here, Chris?
When it actually does what it's supposed to. I hear you.
Or no?
I guess we could. It's not like it's a huge abundance of animals. That's all I was looking at. I was hoping we'd see a few more things before we fired up the water, but.
Relative to what we've been seeing on the previous dive, this is pretty high.
Do you have your mic turned on?
Sorry, it's
Oh, there
farther
you
away from my mouth. Relative to what we have been seeing on the previous watch, this is pretty high.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and do it then.
And if we're gonna Niskin, I'm gonna reset the DVL just for visual pleasure, if that's okay. Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
No
with me.
autos. Okay.
I don't think so.
Thank you.
Dan, would you be able to sort of zoom in on that fuzzy stuff that's on the top of the sponge?
Sure. Yeah, go
Pretty
ahead.
sure these are hydroids.
Push in there, Steve. See if Herc wants to drift up a little bit. That's good.
Yeah, that's what they look like. Hydrozoans.
So they're kind of taking advantage of that sponge habitat, huh?
Yeah, they kind of like the sponge. I've seen this before. I'm not sure why, but
What's the little white guy there in the center bottom of the screen?
center bottom of the screen.
For now, he's right in the middle.
That little branching thing.